Welcome, everybody. Let me see here if I can get the right picture up. I want to welcome you tonight. I'm glad that you could make it to our live Facebook show. If you have friends that can't be here with us live, just let them know that this video will be up on the Visions and Voices Together Facebook page, so you'll always be able to see it there. So tonight I'm excited because we're very fortunate that we have a wonderful guest with us. And she's going to be talking with us about things like the importance of that self-care tips, because as advocates, as parents, I think we often spend our days and nights advocating for our children, researching things on the internet, talking to other parents. And often our day and night is filled with that kind of activity, and we rarely have time or take the time for ourselves, which I think is really important. So tonight our guest, Angela Jarvis-Holland, is with us, and she's going to be sharing some of her tips, not only of being an awesome advocate, but also self-care and confidence tips for us. So I thought I would start with this photo of Angela. Angela, here's a picture of you being a hellraiser. So my guess is, was this, I think was that from Christmas time?
Yeah, and a friend that knows me well bought me those socks.
So yeah, I think that's pretty exciting. And that's how I don't know, Hellraiser, that's how maybe I started knowing Angela. I was kind of stalking the Northwest Down Syndrome Association, and I would get their newsletters and read about them. And I always heard about their wonderful conference that they had each year, All Born In, which we'll hear about later in the broadcast. But I was so excited when I was able, a few years ago, my husband and Dylan and I went out to the conference, and I got to meet this awesome advocate in person. So Angela, welcome to our Facebook group tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's fun.
So I thought first it might be helpful if you could just talk a little bit about your family, because I think sometimes we forget about the importance of a partner, a spouse, our other children in our family. So if you could maybe share about that.
Yeah, well, the picture that you put up, that's my lovely man Stephen, and it's going to be our 25th wedding anniversary this year, so he's a keeper. And I think that most families, if there's a woman that's very involved in advocacy, we know that there's a man that's helping support that, or a partner that's supporting that. And Stephen's been really supportive of me doing what I do. And I have two boys, Quinn and Daniel, and Quinn's 23 and Daniel's 17, and Daniel's the drummer of the family, and he has Down syndrome. And that was kind of my entry into it. But my family, basically, we also have, my sister-in-law lives not far away with her two boys. And I've come to feel the photo's actually, Quinn's the tall guy in the blue shorts, and that's his cousins, and they live in town too. So our family's incredibly important. And also I've got a circle of friends that I consider family. There are people that are my sisters that are just not by blood, but they are sisters. And I will say that that's one of the big pluses that I've found in my advocacy, that it gives you a way to find some really genuine people that share the same passion and values, and they're deeper friendships than I've ever known. So it hasn't felt to me like I've become more isolated since Daniel's been in my life. It's felt like it's grown my circle, and it was a pleasure meeting you and your family, because I'd heard stories about you. I'd heard about your son doing burlesque dancing, and I couldn't wait to meet you. And that was through Kathy Snow, who we, both adore. So it's an invitation into a pretty incredible circle of people too, I think, having a child with Down syndrome.
Oh, exactly. And so I'm looking here. I'll just want to do a quick check with technology and see if
Sure.
people are hearing and seeing us okay. Because when I'm trying to share these pictures, I'm not sure if they're getting the full picture or not. So if somebody could type in if you're seeing us, if you're being able to hear us okay. I want to make sure that we are all a go. So I'm going to see if that, okay, so now we have
That's
you
on
back
full
up, I
screen.
think. Yeah, okay, cool. So people probably know or can tell from your accent that that's probably not a Southeast Portland accent. Do you want to share with us a little bit about where you're from and a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I'm from England, which you probably have guessed. And in England, I did youth and community work, and I worked with a lot of different distressed communities. I've worked with refugees, I worked with street youth, ran lots of different projects there. And when I married Stephen, he is a fine American from California. And we decided Oregon would be a place that we'd like to think about settling and possibly having a family, which we did. So I'd lived in London for about 12 years before we came here. And believe it or not, you can get sick of London. So I miss things about home, but I really, having two boys, I think Oregon's a pretty fine place to be.
Yes, yes, I would agree. The Northwest is a pretty, I don't know, just the rivers and the water and just the scenery in Oregon is pretty amazing.
It is,
so
yeah.
I know after Dan was born, you know, kind of took a different turn there in your journey.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to talk about, your first days of advocacy as a parent and maybe how that's evolved over time?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that triggered my start in advocacy, I will say one thing that was strange was I'd done all kinds of advocacy for a long time, and then when Daniel was born, I didn't really feel like it was relevant, and that was odd. I think you start feeling like you're in a completely new situation and none of what you knew before is relevant. But I'd been relying on early intervention, which at that time was like 4 mornings a week and a big group and all sorts of supports, really rich in services. And that was my village, I think. And then all of a sudden, 60% of that service got cut in one fell swoop, which was just a total wake-up call for me that who's left standing if services go away or if people that we've relied on that are paid go away? Well, I was left, and the parents that I'd come to know were left, and our kids were left, but 60% of the staff had gone. And that's when I thought, I need to just get back to that feeling of people who most affected by an issue are the best people to deal with what they need and make that happen. So that's when there was a parent support group that was kind of not doing quite so much at that point in time. It had done some wonderful things, but we had all hit the same issue at the same time. So there was a lot of energy and a lot of anger, and we took that and turned it into coming together to create a learning community. And then it was also, for me, really important that the thing that was different was we were going to be in charge of our learning community and the professionals could help us. And that way, if they went away, we're still there. We're still a community learning together. And that's been the model and the way that we've built everything out that I've done since. I was staying home with Daniel at the time. And I actually volunteered about 20 hours a week to really build the organization for a few years. And that means, I've got some privilege and I was supported by Stephen, but it was still a choice that meant we stayed in a small house and we had one car. but it felt like what was most meaningful. And I think as moms, we all try and do what's most meaningful and helpful. And that was the start of my path with NWDSA. And that community model that we do trainings on a morning with childcare, with a concurrent session for the kids. About 50 people come to it. It's still going, and that's like 17 years almost that it's been in existence. So that was the start of it for me, and that created a circle of people sharing the same need and trying to work out how to meet that need together. And then it's grown from there, really.
Well, and I think that's, I think that was a very wise decision on you and your group's part, as far as making it intentional that the parents were going to be the ones driving the organization, and their voice was going to be leading and deciding what they needed for supports. But then also recognizing that bridge to having the collaboration with the professionals when that was appropriate and when that, fit in. I think, I'm sure the parents appreciate your leadership and all the things that you've done there.
Well, I think that it's not all about my leadership. It's that I'm really good at asking other people to do stuff. Maybe that's leadership. But I think that it's we talk about our kids and say we want to be strength-based, and then we're not always strength-based about ourselves. I remember I was always ready to tell people what I couldn't do. Well, once you start practicing telling people what your child can do, you can start thinking about that yourself. And I love it when there's a group of 10 people in a room. I want to know, what is it you're good at? What is it you could share? What is it you have to bring to the party? And then I can say, that's great, I'm rubbish at computers and you're really good. And I think that people do really respond to feeling like their gifts can add to where you're going. And I think that's been pretty important as we've grown. I really do appreciate the professionals that will honor that. And I think we've got to do this in partnership.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something I think I've just, recently maybe come to terms with, recognizing my own strengths and being confident, and trying to help support other parents to recognize that, because I talk so much about the gifts that our kids have, like you said, and strengths-based, how we can build on their strengths and learn new things and meet their needs. And then it's like, Charmaine, what about the parents? What about yourself? It's like, so that's where I thought this month it was going to be a good place to start when we are starting the new year, for parents to have that confidence, and for them to give, have some time for reflection and look at the strengths and the gifts that they have. So, and I know one of the things that you do at the Northwest Down Syndrome Association is you do have these open times during the week where parents can drop in. And I'm wondering what kinds of, comments do you see a pattern with parents, as far as, sometimes when I talk to parents, albeit when they call an advocate, it's usually because there's a crisis. But, the other day I heard a mom talking about she felt such guilt because her son's in middle school and she didn't finally figure out things until just recently. And she's, she feels like she's lost time, or people that are just so confused and overwhelmed. And, what do you see with the parents that you talk with there?
Well, we had drop-in today, and there was one person, their child's in middle school, and they're getting the school's been very unhelpful in their IEP and their planning for the year ahead. So she came in to show us her IEP, to go through it, to get some support. And we're very keen on asking, what's your family's mission and vision? We ask it about the kids, but what's your vision? It's not my job to dream for anybody else. And I can't predict what somebody else's dreams are. If somebody wants to tell me that their child's fearfully made in the image of God and that's the center of their heart and their family, then we need to figure out and work along what would they like to see manifest. Somebody else might have a really different vision. So we work with helping people figure out what's their fall on the sword. But also, I think we don't know what we don't know. And I did something called Partners in Policy Making, and I met a lot of older people with disabilities. So I also think it's important that we kind of teach the history of the disability movement and what some of the important things are to maybe advocate for. Because if you've always had other people tell you what you can dream, you may be not dreaming as big as you could. So some of what we do is to always say, so where would you like your kid to be in a few years? And what would you like life to be like? And could it be bigger than that? And what would it take? And then get in with their strengths and help them. But to your point about somebody feeling guilty, we have a joke at work. I pretend that I've got like holy water, and I'll say this absolves you of all guilt, and flick it at people. Because I think being a mother is being in a state of guilt, whatever. And when your child has a disability, you maybe carry that heavier than you should. So if we are all doing our best with each day we've got, and we're trying our best, and when we learn something new, we do something new, I'm really encouraging the people to not do that to themselves. And I have to practice it myself. And then the other person that came in today had a little one with them, and they just came in and were making visuals. And we've got a lamination, we've got all that gear, and we've got a play area. So having people feel like it's their center and we're not experts just doing things to them or for them is also part of the advocacy that we do. Because, you know, that woman making those visuals, she's better at doing that than I am. And maybe it'll be the other thing that we do is if we notice somebody's good, then we might say, I wonder if you could make 2 of those sets and help another family, or come back and share what you learned today. So having people not feel like an empty vessel is something we work on. But then also helping them know some values to aspire to. And I think you know those values. You spoke at our conference about some of those.
Well, and that's so true. And I just, I don't know, I love that feeling of community that it seems like you have a talent for doing. And I think that is a leadership quality as far as bringing people together. And I think you and your staff and your board members and the people that help with the conference all are such welcoming people that that just shines through everything that you do.
Oh, that's lovely to hear.
Yeah, I really think that's true. And, you know, one of the things I was going to ask is for you to share some self-care tips that you have. And I'm going to see if I can get the picture to come up like we want it to, because this is still all new to me. So,
yeah, there it is. Well, this would be a photo of one man's heaven is another man's hell. This is a shed that we've built out in Prineville, and there's no electricity, there's no running water, and there's no Wi-Fi. And what was beautiful for me is our family, my nephews, my sons, Stephen, we built it. And this is step 1, and we will over time build a cabin. But this was a conscious decision as I found my life getting a little overwhelmed by the circle of this work. We decided we needed to think what was important to us. And, you know, there's a lot that you learn about advocacy for your child with a disability that's really helpful for all of you. So we kind of do not a person-centered plan, but a family thinking, you know, what do we want to see happen in the next year? The way that you do with an IEP, what's important to us all? What are we committed to? How are we going to help each other with some of the things we want to see happen? And everyone signed on for this. So we've got a couple of acres out in Prineville, which backs onto 5,000 acres of BLM land. And on this trip, the photo that you've got up with the snow, this was Daniel's first ever snowshoeing experience. And it's just so lovely to be out there and away from everything. So finding the thing that means something to you. I mean, for somebody else, it could be shopping at the mall, whatever it is. Oh, yeah. And this, I mean, this kind of does epitomize me a little. It's like I'm in this scruffy little shed and I have to bring my candelabra with me. And underneath it is actually a full bar that we have in there. But what feeds your soul a little bit, and do it. And I know the sock said Hellraiser, but I really feel that grace is important too. What can you wrap round yourself that feels, what's your kind of warm? What will make you feel good? And then work together to make sure that that's part of your life. And, it takes effort. It takes effort to say, oh, I can't do this extra thing, or I won't be at this thing. But if you go and take care of yourself, when you come back and there's another thing to be done, you're going to be able to do it a lot better. So that kind of epitomizes it. And our little home sweet home on our shed is part of our story.
And I know friends and celebrations are another part of what feeds your soul.
Yeah, this is Jamie. She's fabulous. And I have some really incredible friends. And Jamie, I met her when her child was about 3, and she came to our board asking about whether we could support the idea of a play group. And we actually, we're always trying to build leadership, but we asked people to do a 1-page proposal. And we already know we're going to say yes usually, but it's really good to get asked to put your ideas down, formalize something. And I think that was probably Jamie's first real kind of advocacy experience, that she advocated for an idea that she had. And then she set a play group up, and now it's quite a few years since. And she actually works at Clark County Parent Coalition now, just over the river from us. And we collaborate on a lot of work. But we also like to get together, and as you can see, there's sometimes a beer involved.
Some bit of alcohol always helps, right? At the end of a long day, or
yeah, a difficult IEP or whatever, it can be helpful.
I know. Yeah, I think I remember one time when it was a particularly stressful IEP meeting, and I just drove straight to our local watering hole and called my husband and said, "I'm here, come join me. I'm not coming home yet." And
yeah, and a little bit of swearing can help sometimes too. But I think as your child's quite a lot, I mean, you've got an adult, and Daniel's 17 on the cusp of being an adult. I think that over time you get a different perspective about how much energy you want to give to being angry, upset, and whatever, and how much you're going to just try and move on sometimes. And I think I was a lot more intense when Daniel was younger and spent more energy than I perhaps needed to at times. I don't mean be casual about the things that are most important, but really getting distressed about things rather than getting a plan and working on things, it just can exhaust you. And it's advice I'd give to parents of young children to just find some of their people, invest some time in relationships so that you're not on your own with things. I've always got people I can bring to an IEP with me, and I think that takes some effort. And it's also that those same people know I will go to their IEP. So if you can think about what could you share with someone, you can maybe bank some real goodwill for when you need it. And that's a really nice way to think of things, because then you don't feel apologetic for asking for help because you've offered help. And then sometimes we just need someone that's got a lot more experience to help us. And I know that's your field. You're an expert on IEPs. So knowing to ask for help when you need it is important.
Right. And I think, when I look at what are some things, and I think it's so wonderful that you shared with us that land that you have, and that's such a peaceful place for you and your family to go to.
Yeah.
And I try to look at, what are some other things to do. I know we have a few people online with us, so if I'm going to look here at some of our comments, and if people online watching us live tonight, if they could type in maybe some tips or some ideas that they use for self-care to re-energize and rejuvenate yourself when you need to. I see Amanda's here, and Yael had a comment. She said, I think she's referring to when I said I stopped at our local watering hole after a meeting. She said, I've been to meetings like those. Sometimes I thought maybe we should bring the drinks to the meeting. So yeah, maybe we should have either we could have bring the drinks to the meeting or shift the meeting to happy hour, right? You know, I know when Dylan was little, we had the first couple of meetings at our house when he was like 3, just to give it that different atmosphere and that different flavor. And so sometimes I think when we're in conference rooms, when we're in boardrooms, it makes it feel stiff and stilted and, you know, this business versus we come together and let's share ideas and bounce ideas off of each other, you know.
Yeah, and something we always do is bring at least, I mean, Daniel now does his own IEPs, but we used to bring photos of, he actually starts his meeting with a PowerPoint. And I've been thinking, you know, even a very young child could probably do a PowerPoint with you and could just have some slides of things they love to do or whatever. When that person with the disabilities in the room, or when photos and real things about that person are there, not just those scores, I think you can really do a lot of psychological stuff to change that meeting. And we always take food with us. And if I feel like it's going to be 10 of them, then I'm going to bring 3 or 4 of mine, because it feels too much. Even with the experience I've got, it can feel too much. I need some of my people. I need somebody that's going to kick me under the table when I'm getting too red in the face. And I also, relationships really sustain me. And I really try and be, my sock said Hellraiser, but I'm not fond of the term mothers from hell, which I've heard. It's not me. I think that I dollop great gobs of grace on everybody. And it kind of leaves, I think you can create a feeling of there's an obligation to be a little graceful back. It's not always going to happen. But, you know, any one kindness that somebody's done who's been difficult, I want to flag that kindness up. And I do, in between IEPs or whatever, my school board all know Daniel, and he's done a presentation and they say they're on his team. He sends them updates to his team about something he's enjoyed, about something that a teacher did, about an experience at school. And they're so used to 10 other people telling them how bad everything is. That kind of creates a different energy. So I'd encourage people, I don't mean spend your life appeasing, because I never apologize for asking what his rights are. That's the other thing. You have to get enough of a toughness about you to say, I really do appreciate you, and I know your job is difficult, and here's the law, and here's what we need for Daniel. So how are we going to get to this? That isn't attacking anybody, and I'm not saying it because I want to give anyone a lecture on how to do an IEP. I'm saying it because it's basically one of my take care of myself things. It's too exhausting for me to be fighting a lot.
Right. Oh, exactly. And that's, you know, and I think that's that thing of either in a, you know, personal conversation or on the phone or through an email, is to always try to start with something positive. Because I think when staff, you know, get a phone call from a parent or open up that email, I think their first thought is, oh no, you know, what's going to happen here? And they have their, you know, defenses kind of raised. But I think when we can be genuine and, you know, say something that we do appreciate as far as the time that they've given, or, you know, the extra support that they've given one of our kids. And then, like you said, but still be, you know, assertive and say, and, you know, these are things that I notice. And I like how you use the word and instead of the word but, because I think when we say but and however, it just it kind of dismisses that compliment that we just gave them. So I like how you use the word and.
Yeah, you've got to turn some charm on where you can. And
Right.
I'd say that an English accent's useful, but I wouldn't suggest faking it.
I know. I was going to say, I think there's something about the accent that somehow like makes it sound more pleasant. So.
I know, I've sometimes said some pretty powerful things, and then people are like, but the way you said it, it's just so nice.
I'm sure. Well, and I appreciate you taking time tonight. I know you've had a packed day at your office and serving parents, and but I did want to give you some time to talk about your annual conference. It's going to be your 12th annual conference, All Born
Yeah.
In, coming up. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
All Born In is it's a cross disability conference, and it's all best practices and the very best speakers. We have some national speakers, and it's a community coming together, and there are about 500 people that come for the day. Half of them are staff, half of them are parents and self-advocates, and you really get your battery recharged, and you get really good concrete information you can use for your family, and ways to advocate, ways to do your IEP, what's the latest with assistive technology. It kind of crosses the whole gamut, and I love it because we have it's birth through 26, so you've got parents with little guys, and you've got older people there, and you're all learning together. So you might have somebody with a 2-month-old hearing a keynote about employment and people with disabilities, which I think is really important, that we see that big picture and we have a vision for the future. So that's what the conference is about, and it's a real stone soup conference, and it's got a nice vibe to it, as well as it's a lot of hard work in a day. And I think people from the evals, people tell us that they feel it's a pretty worthwhile way to spend a day together, and that they feel a bit more equipped for the year ahead.
Oh, I would definitely endorse that idea. I know when Jim and Dylan and I came, it was exciting to be in the company of like-minded parents and professionals. The URL that people can go to, it's allbornin.org, and registration will be up shortly, where you can register online. It's going to be held in Portland, Oregon. But I would really encourage people to plan for that in the middle of March 18th, and make a trip out to Oregon and immerse yourself in inclusion and, accepting of diversity and celebrating diversity. Do you want to, I know you have some of your...
I'm just getting a plug, hold on.
Okay, that's fine. So I know Angela and I were talking before we went on that they have confirmed most of their keynote speakers, and she was also telling me about the youth leadership strand that they're going to be having, and I know that's a traditional thing that they have as far as youth both with disabilities and without disabilities making presentations at the conference. And the thing that Angela referred to too also was about learning from adults with disabilities. So they'll have several people on their list, not only as keynote speakers, but breakout workshop speakers that are adults with disabilities that you'll be able to learn from also. So I think it's really exciting that that's an opportunity. And I don't know how many of you know Michael Bailey, who's just this wonderful orator. I've heard him speak several times, and I was going to check with Angela. My guess is Michael will be a speaker again at this year's conference, but he does an outstanding job of talking about the history of the disability movement.
I think.
Go ahead, Angela.
Hi, I'm back online. Sorry.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I had a technical issue.
That's fine. So I was talking about who some of the speakers are going to be at the conference. So did we just lose you? It says that I'm the only person here. So we'll wait for Angela to get back on. The other thing I thought of is I forgot to ever introduce myself at the beginning, but we've got Angela back. So
Yeah.
do you want to talk about some of the keynote speakers that you're going to have at the conference?
Sure. Rebecca Coakley is going to be one of our keynotes, and she is a little person with an incredible set of skills. She's been in Obama's administration in the National Disability Network, and she has done a lot of mentoring, but a lot of policy work, and has a really clear vision about how we could build dignity for people with disabilities and what it takes to embed that in our policy. But she also, I think her role as a mentor and her experience of how to be an advocate is something that I'm really, really interested in learning from her about. And then Keith Jones, he is an African-American man that experiences cerebral palsy, and he talks a lot about how we in our work and in our lives, we need to accept the humanity of everybody. And I think that's a message that we all really resonate with at this time. And then there are 36 sessions in all in the day. So there's probably something for everyone in that. And all of that information will be up online. There's sessions for the early years, a lot of emphasis on how do you get a truly inclusive education and what do you need to advocate around, and what are the pieces that make a good IEP. And I think that the reason that that's powerful is just how many partners help us and how many speakers with expertise share their expertise.
Right. And those connections that you make at conferences can be such long-lasting friendships. And with technology like Facebook, I mean, Angela and I have been able to stay in touch, and we saw each other again at the TASH conference in Portland last year. And so it's just such a nice network. And I think that is so important for us as parents. You talked about that earlier, Angela, about that not feeling isolated, not being alone, and not having any friends to turn to. So coming to a conference is a great introduction to a new family of friends. And so I encourage people to register for the All Born In conference, and I'm sure you'll take back so much information, practical tips, but also you'll just take back that inner feeling of this is what life can be about, and this is what we can create.
Yeah, and I think, I just really want to encourage people. It's a lifetime job being an advocate for a person with a disability that you love, but it's a marathon, so you don't need to sprint all the time. And I think that sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and I think that we need to take those breaks and take those breaths. And I have a lot of fun times in my life, and I think you've looked over my shoulder on Facebook, and if we are just grim advocates, what are we advocating for? Your child's part of a family, and in a way, a mother can make the weather in a family. I don't want to be responsible for the ice storms, but at the same time, it's like, what fun is there? What is the purpose? What is it that your family want to bring and manifest in this world? And forget about disability sometimes and just enjoy each other. I'm glad I have two sons, because one of my guides is I want the same kind of life for both of my boys. But then I also see that life is more than school, more than work. It's also that we laugh together, that we play card games, that we enjoy the building that we're building out in Prineville. So you have to be sure that you kind of fit in all of those pieces of the puzzle together, or the reason that you're advocating for this real life becomes irrelevant because you've lost the real life.
Oh, exactly. And And I so appreciate knowing you, and I wish we were closer than 8 hours apart,
Oh,
driving
me too.
distance, so we could probably, I don't know, I'm sure that there would be a lot of fun that we could get into, and also some, I don't know, some things that might
Mischief.
not be so totally appropriate, right? But you know, one of the slides that I have at the end here is something that you had posted on Facebook. And so if you want to
Yeah.
give us a little bit of a background of that wonderful evening and what you were doing there. And the
Yeah.
slide doesn't show the whole pictures. So if you can maybe explain that to our audience.
Yeah, I was actually at an event where a good friend of mine has become a city commissioner, and she has a son with a significant disability. And she was a real outsider in a race with an incumbent, and she actually got elected. So it was a celebration of her election and her moving into that position. But it was also at the same event, they were having photographs taken for us to leave a message to be sent to Donald Trump. And we got a copy of the photograph. And then as part of a whole series, the voice of people, a lot of people, is going to be sent with those photographs. So my T-shirt had disability rights as civil rights, which is a truth. And then what I wanted to say is that love is the strongest force. And I really believe that. I think love is stronger than hate. Love is stronger than darkness. It is something that we have in abundance as mothers and as fathers. And I think that I just really encourage people to dig into that as an energizing force for us all. And it was interesting to see everybody's photographs and the things they said. And personally, one of my ways I'm taking care of myself is to not stay in a place of being angry too much. I don't mean I'm never angry. I don't mean that I don't feel very strongly about things. But I also, I just feel like, you know, I'm really grateful that I have both of my sons. And I need to rest in that place sometimes and be glad of the love that I have and how strong it is around me.
Well, thank you so much, Angela. I think these words of wisdom that you shared with us come from a place of heart. And I know the vision that you have, not only for both of your sons, but also the vision that you help other parents realize, and the possibilities and the opportunities that you know are out there for our kids. So thank you for all that you do. I would just want to remind people that if they weren't able to watch it live and you have some friends that would want to see this, it will be up on my Facebook page. And I was saying when you were gone, Angela, I thought I forgot at the very beginning, I didn't even introduce myself, but I think most of the people on here probably know who I am. But as an advocate, as a parent, a retired teacher, I so appreciate the opportunity to connect with others. So thank you again, Angela, for being with us tonight. And I want to remind people that we're on a regular schedule where every Thursday evening at 7 o'clock Mountain Time, we have a Facebook Live show. A couple times a month, it's an interview with people. And then the other 2 times a month, it's myself giving tips and teaching some advocacy skills for parents. But it's always a place that we welcome that interaction and that connection with others. So until next week, this is Charmaine Tanner, and I will see you. I hope that the challenge that you have for this year or for this week is that you will enable yourself to give some time to yourself, take some time to reflect and do something joyful that brings you happiness to your soul and to your heart. And we shall see you next week. So thank you so much for being here with us. Bye-bye.
Bye.